Hello, a bunch of people who are on off the state of Connecticut corrections offices and judicial branch offices and next to it through time. There are proof too driving past it. They have roles with all kinds of natures of organized crimes and medicines crimes with campuses names and with names tied to databases with a whole bunch of different countries at the same time. They're demonstrating that they're supposed to hide things tied to that and pretend it's classified while they're confessing it. They're leaking it. Increasingly, people that live near me planted evidences with people at Trinity College, adults and students, recorded, confessed, demonstrated this before I was ever a student there. The same names increasingly with intelligence families at and at the sides of Central Connecticut State University in New Britain, Connecticut. They have and have had roles intercities through time, including with people from Yukon and Storrs, Connecticut, involved with predicate acts at campuses in Weathersfield, Rocky Hill, Newington, Hartford, with the same names next to the campuses, too, including fire campuses and medical campuses and their family members, running in to hide live progressions and sequence shifts and other illusions, as all sides of criminal and civil cases, all natures of investigations, investigators being used remotely, criminally for influence at the same time, interbranch switching names and sequences self-valued at the same time with names on both sides of cases involved with predicate acts with data into databases on a mass scale. The people who have been using words like crimes, a breaching method showed them they need to hide the value of that, as it is actually capable of being discerned by everyone, and as it is being demonstrated by nature itself. Nature itself shows us that one of the things that the laws that were entrenched before America's founders were born, that were timed collusion slash S with other natures of organized crime, criminal enterprises, and terrorists, and uses of the difference of the collusions of that, or the roles with the torture, extortion, in fact, human nature, slavery of everyone laws, sickly distinctly too against black northern colonies and southern colonies, had it entrenched slavery. And those countries that were roles with it were themselves being and having been used remotely, individually grouped and together, criminally foreign influence and tactically delusions raw. It is inseparable from how we have black and white law names then and still. Criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions wrought with their own differences and with other people's differences, bringing up black and white, leaving out the breaching method, while nature communicates about it, and while our founders communicated about it, replacing our founders' communications using what they said or using what someone wrote and is published about them. They're an expert. And meanwhile, leaving out what they declassified about what they said, they didn't have free speech. We're supposed to get ourselves free speech. WFSB, Connecticut's Channel 3 News, CBS. They have been ongoing various natures of organized crimes with the campuses and with people that have been putting predicate acts with a whole bunch of different countries and the agencies, the directors like a James Comey and a Robert Luskin are involved with the World Trade Center predicate acts, if through criminal incompetence alone, too, with black people's rights of eyes. They had the audacity to group criminal enterprises to pretend they couldn't fathom what really causes people to be in gangs in like New York City, for example, Harper, Connecticut, New Britain, little rat traps with the intelligence next to them, too, with the Gill family, fear God. Those with the intelligence families of tied to the Kyle Gill and Tanya Gill and wherever her new name is. And there's nothing personal against them. They need to pretend other. That's part of their roles with the judges and prosecutors, involved with people from Weathersfield with them through time, planting evidences on all sides of my house. That proves that he was one of the ones as working on the roof near me. Near one of the ones involved too. Further, with more child abusers, leaders of the kids through the years, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, years apart, and once further then years apart that were still roles, and with more with the schools with this. And these are ones with different schools at the same time, with the security of the schools and with the different natures of jobs tied to the databases. This is ones with criminal enterprises and private ones at the same time. The names next to and next to news locations with intelligence with them. A bunch of ways kept criminally foreign tactically delusions raw and pretending it's personal, changing and faking what people say about it. Please get WFSB to change the fake conversations they have with me, with themselves and with others about the World Trade Center attack. And they faked and changed evidences increasingly with retired police chiefs involved with Connecticut's news locations and agencies and police departments, with intelligence families that used to live near me and ones that still do, involved further with the Phil and with people tied to a Smith family and others involved with credible threats against me and proofs that with predicate acts against me, identity theft frauds, falsified police reports rolls against me. And they've been using all truths for lies too. They already recorded that. That's why they can't get on paper with the interbranch. They had collusion/S with themselves as a kid. Police pretended they had conversations with me at the police station too, as a kid, now as an adult. The kids who did go down there, they changed and faked what they said, made they having fake communications with me, fake ties, fake natures of ties to me, as ones increasingly involved with the World Trade Center predicate acts and other natures of murders and untimely deaths, intercities that were recorded and brought up at the same time, and timed use/S of that rolls by others involved with it, including a probation officer of Mike Roberts, from Mike Oliver, a famous boxer, pretty famous. I don't know, he's a pretty good boxer. I don't know how I haven't been keeping up with the boxing. I didn't even get my professional boxing license yet. These are people involved with former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, next to trainers associated, like next to who I was going to have work with my corner. I don't know if he's too old now or what, but none of his neighbors are involved with Hartford courts and their family members and intimate ties, and foreign and domestic military, and people with former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, his co-defendants, their family members, as people involved also with the location/S, and names next to the people I know from boxing, who they involved before and after the World Trade Center attack, also with leaders of kids, and the kids of leaders of kids, like a Dean Judd from Central Connecticut State University, and his kid is recorded. I never had a word of conversation with either of them. His kid is recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with covering up with Eric Burgess as one of the ones with the military, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. He needed help with. It turns out it's a former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, his co-defendants, their family members, their neighbors, and Hartford courts, and their family members and intimate ties had been at West Hartford locations. Increasingly, people tied to Wethersfield mayors and mayors from Connecticut tied to them are ones that have been on Facebook too, with Facebook itself and inter-platforms. The FBI has been influencing the platforms to roles with them. With New Britain Superior Court's Facebook page is involved with the Joshua Schumacher and others with the name KNER and KERR. Also with Officer Jerry Miller, with predicate acts with the campuses, with child offenders, leaders of kids years apart, and people on all sides of religious spots where we have religious nutbags involved with other natures of organized crimes, and roles with predicate acts at campuses of all ages and natures. There are hyper additional collusions, not just with the databases, identities of relativity to ourselves, by the breaching method that we have replaced too as a scientific value inside the communications of our founders. It has replaced scientific value, however, inside the communications of our founders. Our founders' communications are replaced. And that how and why. Our founders didn't have free speech and had to leave things declassified. And nature shows us they didn't have free speech. There were crazy, crazy laws and roles with it, self-value, and other had to be protected to an extent. Otherwise, that body would be sensed, including if they're a majority of people, including if they're everyone. That's why everyone with black people's whites of eyes doesn't want slavery. Those exceptions were made by a breaching method that only allowed them. It's a torture method, extortion method, in fact, human nature slavery method, therefore physically. And while that's going on, everyone's rolls with it and blaming other things, leaving out the breaching method and its use / estimate that no one fathomed. How can everyone can think? Everyone needs to pretend they can think. Clearer than day, all kinds of medicines, crimes, and criminally foreign influence uses of databases that no one's looking into. These are people that have offensive identity theft, fraud, slanders, and one's from the past, and once they're shown they need to hide their value as it was and is now actually in the future too, ahead of time. It's weird how and why they left out the guilt that our founders communicated for us to understand, that were self-valued, otherwise they were sensed and it was adapted to. The guilt of the three branches of government, of the intelligence tied to them, with the colonies and with the states. James Madison's plan is the only thing that forced the North or the South to overcome slavery to the extent they did, which is still, you guys have our founders' words replaced, our founders' communications replaced, and their words interpreted self-valued, leaving out and changing what they communicated about that and what nature does. And or two, self-valuing someone speaking about their words. And the nature debate contains quality aspects of nature that are self-valuing, criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions, raw. Quality aspects of fact-checking nature. And fact-checking nature itself as criminal insidiousness. I'm not even a lawyer. I have black pupils, whites of eyes. I've discerned this since I was a kid. People sensing and how they adapt is from other classrooms, for example. With the people who has roles putting fake things in databases. The people I went to campuses with will tell you the things are true that I was telling you. All exceptions in nature that appear to be in demonstration of other are people that have been planting evidences and changing digital evidences with the British Superior Court's family members and Harvard's Court's family members and Connecticut's District Court family members and family members at and next to the state corrections offices, at and next to the state judicial branch offices, who have roles with identity theft, fraud, slanders. And there are that three ways manifest. Their styles of it against A through Z. Their natures of roles, these are roles with having been used already. Names on all sides of criminal and civil cases, their lawyers, their family members, their neighbors, their sources. The same thing with the courts, their different positions, their family members, neighbors, etc. The campuses associated with their families. They're putting predicate acts in those campuses. And then there are roles with acting tied to that. They're building upon that, only capable of being self-valued, which is also relative to where and how no one has looked backwards and examined, how many ways there are criminally foreign influence, tactical delusions, raw convictions made by the syntax nature of the people of the sciences. They have all kinds of collusions, changing and faking what we communicate and what we say. They're just faking and changing, faking audio and video transcripts on campuses filmed 24/7 to hide how they already used all natures of investigation. They were already self-valued roles with all natures of investigation. Investigators use remotely criminally foreign influence, including with black pupils, whites of eyes. If you have either of those and you spoke on black or white, you failed. You left out the breaching method. Otherwise, everyone failed you when you spoke about it. Otherwise, it would have surfaced by now. We have black, white pupils, whites of eyes, inseparable from how the breaching method clearer than day. Reassigned when nature communicates with that. Or anyone who would bring it up would be sensed. In the nature debate, again, it contains quality aspects of nature, demonstration of the same thing you were with all exceptions, too. Because nature uses exception nature the ways we know, but hyper additionally, too. So when it's fake, we know. You leave out the smallest finite detail, we can discern it. But more and more, that is incapable of being because of how we have valued the finite, the order of the finite, what is active as actually grouped, and actively and progressively. Nature is showing us the value of seasons that aren't even here yet and ones that are gone, how they are only increasing at the same time, even if they never come again. The seasons that aren't even here yet. Because it is showing us its identity to an extent. It's complete, which comes with its complete identity relationship to itself, and the only increasing value of that. Here, or as a negative value, nature quality of diffusion to itself. So it is forced from here as a special difference, as lethal hadith, as forced negative value nature progression, acts in nature to be consumed by the evolution of positive value nature progression, acts in nature elsewhere in space/existence, because we no longer care about the system that is actually reality. This is actually how it should, reality not as criminal insidious as nature is a reality. And let alone simultaneously too, tactically delusions rot reality. Our formal voices have stayed. Here many pray. Psychiatry, I'm not even a doctor. I could delineate their delusions from their criminally foreign influence, factual nature, quality, ethic, and nature itself regarding American history, the principles of it. They have collusion/S with replacing and having had replaced how we were directed to refer to James Madison. We were to refer to our founders, plural, as James Madison, singular, and as his plan. And then they went and got George Washington to agree to help them and use that plan. And then there were presidents. And after the other founders were first forced, the other third of the founders, George Washington came to Wethersfield, Connecticut, and to Hartford, Connecticut, and he had the counter store at Webb House, now renamed the Webb Stevens Museum, right next to the Witch Trials place. Other communicated from both of them that what nature and what our founders themselves and what nature itself communicates about that. You don't leave out those crazy laws against everyone that were entrenched in slavery against blacks distinctly too. But not distinctly too. Against everyone, northern colonies and southern colonies, it was entrenched. You guys have other things, others yourselves, pretended were the causes of the Civil War. Whilst both sides were still entrenched roles with all kinds of six-pack, human nature, torture, extortion, slavery by the breaching method, manifest as all kinds of identity theft, fraud, slanders, styles, needs, natures, subject treatments, styles blaming other things other themselves for what nature and what our founders communicated, and is about the breaching method as a scientific value. Black people, it's time. At A through Z, we have a semi-ancient, there's another name, there are proofs. It perfected the method of getting in semi-ancient times A through Z to blame other things, others or selves for things it caused without anyone realizing too, causing them in defenses of the reactions to it, not knowing how to do it properly, increasingly without even realizing it, self-valuing roles more and more incapable of affording the words by the value of the sciences of the identity of the sciences share. Words properly by how it is functional, being hyper invisible but still discernible, as a distinct identity of hyperconjunction to all parts of speech of English grammar, as the invisible but still discernible. It is what we are discerning as the hyper invisible but discernible. What, where, and how we discern the needs to have more than one name for verb appreciated. And for example, those coupled in group, the present participle and the past participle. See how present and past are about time/forever nature. But that is the body of the hyper invisible, but still discernible. And the subject treatments, we could only grapple with subject treatments individually finite or finite, grouped and simultaneous to an extent, but as a quality of diffusion too. Further distinct from that while not distinct from it. In other words. But in other words, I forgot what I titled this, this video. Thank you, people. Have a great night. Vaccines.